Today we're going to learn how to create a very simple table. We'll create the database and then we'll create the table under it. In shipping, the most common list that you're going to use is the address list or the consignee list, the receiver list, commercial invoice, or inventory lists. Today what we're going to do is we're going to create the address list. Very simple table in a database. You could use SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, Oracle. Today we're going to be using SQL Express and SQL Management Studio that you can enter the information and build your queries and your tables and your databases. You can download both SQL Express from the Microsoft website and SQL Management Studio also from the Microsoft website. The purpose of this is you would have the data such as an address book sitting on your database, and you could either upload it individually, address by address, or you can do batch uploads of addresses to your database and then use those for whatever applications are going to integrate with your database that you've created. So let's start off with SQL Management Studio in the master database, which is a default database built when you install SQL Express. Now, you cannot create a database in a database. Logically, the database doesn't exist yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a database called address info. So we're going to say create a database address info. If you notice, I use a underscore here in place of a gap or a space. When you're creating SQL databases, tables, column names, what you want to do is you get in the habit of using an underscore instead of a space. That way you don't have to use brackets or other things to clean up the space if you did have that in there. I'm going to go ahead and create the database. So we've now created the database. Because I am in the master, I want to create my tables in the database. So we're going to switch to using address info. So use address info. This now puts me in the address info database. And remember, the hierarchy goes, the database can have multiple tables, and then you create a table in a database, and then those tables can have multiple columns. You create the columns, and then you can populate the columns with the data that you're going to use. In this case, the database is address info. The table, we're going to name it create table address book. So the table is going to be address book, and then the column name will be the common column names in the address book, and then we're going to populate it with some information. So the common or the correct way to create a table is very simple. Create table, give it a name, and then have an open bracket. What that open bracket does is it allows us now to put the column names in there. We'll just set up a closing bracket here at the bottom. And using the company name as the first column, and you can call the columns whatever you would like. This is the company name, this is the column name, this is the data type, and this tells the system to allow null values or not, which means whoever's entering the data, if it's null, they're allowed to leave it blank. If it says not null, then they have to enter some kind of data in there. A variable character or a varchar allows alphanumeric, and this is commonly used for strings that aren't going to have any math or date time formulas used on it. This denotes that it's 100 characters long, which usually works for a receiver company name. Go ahead and just populate the rest of these. So as you can see, attention name, address, city, state, this is all varchar, which is just variable characters with different numeric sets to them, or not numeric, but lengths, character lengths, because you want to preserve the memory in a database. So you don't want to use max, because that will just take up memory when you really don't need it. I mean, if you have a state and you're just going to have a 2-digit state code, you don't need to have it 500 characters, right? Let's get into another kind of data type, which is numeric. In this scenario, we're going to use an account number that's only numeric, that's 9 characters long. So when you're inputting the data in here, it will force the information to be 9 characters or less, and it has to be a number. We'll follow that up with a receiver business type. In shipping, it's common to choose whether it's a business or a residential so that the delivery drivers will know. And that's a variable character because it's just 2 characters. And then we're gonna use numeric one more time. And for this, we're gonna assign like a max value that these customers can purchase or use, or just use it as an example to show you how you can change the numeric values. This particular one allows a 7-digit or 7-character long value, and then 2 characters for the decimal place. And then null, of course, they can add null values if they wish. And then the final one is a date and time. So we're going to capture what date this particular address book was updated into the system. So once we run this, we'll create the table and have all of these field names in there. So we're going to highlight this, click on execute. Command has executed successfully. So now we just created our table. So let's just test it and run a query. So we're going to say select and then asterisk, which calls all of the column names. We're going to say from and address info. Well, address info is the database name. This is address book. Because when we created the table, I'll write it down here, we say create address book. So we're going to select from the address book now. And at the bottom here, we should see those column names. And there we have it. All right. So great. We've just created the table. Pretty easy and straightforward. Now we're going to insert some information into this table, make sure it works. So here we are going to type in insert into address book, our table name there. We're going to use a open bracket and a closed bracket. And what we're going to now do is put in the column names. Because these are the column names, we do not need quotes around them, single quotes. So we're just going to go ahead and column names here. Oops. You can see receiver name, receiver attention, all your common column names that was in the create table list when we created that table. Now we're going to give it values. And these values are going to match up with the column names above. So receiver company name matches up with Ace Hammers. Receiver attention matches up with John Doe, right? Now, what I want to do is I'm going to create 2 records. So I'm just going to type in a go right after we do this insert. And just tighten it up here a bit. And now I'm going to just copy and paste that and put it right under the go. And I'm going to just change some information here. We'll call this Acme Buckets. It's going to John Hats. I don't know. And then we'll change the address to 23. So what this will do is this will insert into the address book, look at the column names, then enter the values, go, and then it's going to do it a second time with the second information. If you notice, the last column name for date updated, I just put get date. This is a formula in SQL Server, and what this will do is this will automatically insert the date at the time that the query runs, and this will populate the column for get date. So let's go ahead and highlight both of these. If you execute, you see 1 row affected, 1 row affected there, so 2 rows. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and let's test it. So we're going to say select from address underscore book, and we should have 2 rows populate. Oops. So we got the 2 rows populating here. Now say I only wanted to see the receiver company and say the receiver address. I can say receiver company, select RECEIVER company. And let's take a shorter column. We'll say receiver city. Oh, probably should spell that correctly. Now if I run this, you should only pull those two columns. And you should also spell it correctly. So we're getting, if you see, I keep spelling it incorrectly here. And that's what the error is going to give us. But it's very, it's telling because it says invalid column name. So I know to look at the column name to see if I spelled it correct. And what I'm going to now do is just copy from the table. Make sure I spelled it the way it is in the table. And we'll do this city. Now, I did that to show you that how the errors show up here at the bottom if you don't get it right. So it's going to say select column name for receiver company name, and then column name for receiver city separated by a comma from address book. And here it will give you the two pieces of information that you were querying. If I want to delete that, I can just, if I want to start all over again and keep doing it and practice it, I can now just go back to my master, use master. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop the database. You cannot drop a database while you are inside of the database. So we're going to go back to master and we're going to say drop database address info, and this will drop the database. And now it's been dropped. If I want to, I can just run through that whole exercise again. So that's how you create a very simple table and how you can query your table and make sure it works. I hope you enjoyed this video and look for other ones about Excel, SQL Server, CSV files, and whatnot. Take care.